According to the American Journal of Preventive Medicine Statistics, the total people killed annually in the U.S. With guns, out of that total, 52% are homicides, 42% are, 52% are suicides, 42% are homicides, 4% are actual or are accidental, 1% of them are law enforcement officers, and 1 are of undetermined motivation. And generally, 20 to 25% of those deaths listed as homicides involve self-defense or justifiable homicide. Of the remaining homicides, in other words, the criminal ones, 55% of those are committed by people with a prior violent criminal record. Accidental deaths, according to the National Safety Council, with guns is only 0.6% of all unnatural deaths in the U.S. A person is 31 times more likely to die in an automobile accident, 8.7 times more likely to die from just falling down, 3.3 times more likely to die from drowning, 3 times more likely to die by fire, 4 times more likely to die by poisoning, and if you eat my mother-in-law's cooking, it's like 6 times more. Sorry about that. And 2 times more likely to die by choking. And a special report, if you really want to read a really good special report, when you hear this argument about the health issue being an epidemic, especially from the CDC and so on, pick up a copy of the 1997 winter edition of the Firearms Sentinel. It totally debunks the argument. And it's a little bit too voluminous for me to get into. When the chief talks about Canada and talks, and I always, this kind of really grinds me. 4 minutes? All right. Okay. Do I get an extension?
No extensions for applause break.
Come on.
Handicap.
Okay. You know, I got an armed society, it is a polite society, and the polls. At least let me say one thing about polls. Thank God we're not governed by polls. This is a republic and not a democracy. We don't want to be ruled by the tyranny of the masses. And the law enforcement PACs put $2,500 behind Jim Ryan. I think even $100 of your money went into him. Last year, the pledge members from Grassroots put over $10,000 into his opponent's campaign. And we had a poll, I think it was the second Tuesday of November last year, and Mr. Ryan is out, and that's the only poll that counts. I'll try to make this brief, but this really bothers me when people compare our country to other countries as far as violence goes. I'd much rather live in the worst ghettos in Detroit than in Hebron or Gaza or Mogadishu or Belfast. You're 1,000 times safer on any firing range here or sportsman's club here in America than you are in any European soccer match. Violence is violence, whether it's an LA gangbanger or a Palestinian stone chucker. In India, the motherland of nonviolence and the home of Gandhi, they have a custom over there where their men, if they're displeased with their wives, they douse them with kerosene and light them on fire. In Canada, you know, people say we're so much alike just because we're so close. Canada is much different in many ways. First of all, they do not have a constitutional right protecting their right to keep and bear arms. They've always been trusting and dependent upon their government. If you look at the similarities between the U.S. and Canada in our western expansion, they depended on the Mounties to help them out, where we depended on the 6 guns, okay? Rugged independence. And for good reason, because their government honored all their treaties with their Indians, while we dishonored every single one, okay? The Mounties were there to help them out. They weren't always around to help us out. So we had to depend on ourselves. And the Mounties, you know, their motto is, we always get our man. Over here, it's to protect and serve. If you really want to make a comparison between this country and Canada, then what you should do is look at the rates of arrests per crime, the convictions, and how long they serve the real time in prison for what they've done. Okay? They are afraid of getting caught. Over here, it's like doing business. Criminals got very little fear of getting caught, getting prosecuted, and going to jail. Okay? And the last thing I'm going to say about Canada, and if we got some Canadians in here, I'm going to speak your own language because I'm bilingual. Okay? If you don't like this country, get out and stay out.
Director Mike Hoban will take questions.
All right, I think that, you know, just in closing, and this will be about the fourth time I've said it, we in law enforcement agree that there's a need for some change in our current law. It's a question of how we get there, whose interest we want to satisfy. Certainly in law enforcement, we're interested in satisfying the interests of those people that were sworn to protect and serve. And while certainly we can't satisfy everyone, and no one's going to be completely satisfied, that what we're proposing, I think, is a major modification in the position of law enforcement. I think there is at least room for discussion. And I bring you this information tonight for the first time that it's been made public, and I specifically came here to tell you what's going on in Lansing behind the scenes, and that we are working to try and resolve some of the problems. And I agree with a lot of you that there are problems with the current system. So bear with us. I hope that what I've said here tonight will give you some insight and indicate to you that, in fact, law enforcement is not in any way attempting to repress the law-abiding citizen. We're not. We work for you, but we have a sworn duty, and we're trying to uphold that duty and responsibility the best way that we know. In closing, I want to thank John and Mike for inviting me here. I'd be happy to come back again as the discussions in Lansing continue. Perhaps Representative Cropsey and I could come at some point in time. And, you know, this is not a secret society here. Certainly you people have as much, if not more, to be concerned about as far as what your representatives are doing for you or to you, what law enforcement is doing for you, or to you, I suppose. So anyway, I'm more than happy to share the information as it becomes available. Mike and I will keep in touch, and he can keep you updated. Once again, thank you for inviting me. I've enjoyed it very much. I am available to any of my constituents or anyone else that would like to discuss this matter. I think you all know where to find me. Okay? Thanks a lot.
I have to tell you that over the last 4 years of my political involvement, I have had once in a while a rare occasion to meet somebody who is willing to show a considerable amount of fortitude in coming into a place like this to express a differing opinion. And the chief tonight not only was willing to come here and share a philosophical difference, but I think he came here tonight with a different message than many of us may have expected. Okay, I think there's been a good deal gained here. And thank you, Chief, for coming tonight. Now, we're going to give Mike Hoban 15 minutes to answer your questions, and we'll move on from there. Mike Hoban.
Before I take questions, I want to thank you for coming down all the way from Traverse City, sir. I really appreciate it. Give this man a hand. And I agree with you, 300,000 CCW carries, I call that a good start. Okay? Also, I wanted to mention one thing before I take questions, too. And this has happened in Texas and some of the other right-to-carry states, when a business posts a sign that says you can't bring a gun inside this building, they have the perfect right under their property rights to do that. They are not violating your constitutional rights. But the way you handle that is you don't shop there. If they don't trust you to shop there, don't shop there. Simple as that. Okay? The permit that and the statute says concealed or otherwise, but in my training courses, I emphasize the advantage to having a concealed weapon, not only for personal protection, to have the element of surprise, but also when you have a right to carry state. I always make this point that Dr. Iverson, would have been a lot less likely to have been killed, not just because she could have carried and would have been 3 times more likely, because as a doctor she could have got a CCW permit, but the invisible deterrent of having a society where you don't know if one guy or the next guy is armed, that makes it a polite society. That reduces the crime. But the advantage to you carrying concealed is mostly for element of surprise, and plus if if you're a business person or whatever, you don't want to be walking around with a gun. And I want to make a point about something that the chief brought up that goes along with this. He said that very few people need to use a gun, and I agree. I mean, of all the people that carry guns, very few people need to use them for self-protection, but very few people get in automobile accidents, but that's why we have insurance. Very few people get cancer. Okay, it's a very small rate, but I advise you to take as many steps as possible to prevent yourself from getting cancer as you can. You never know when you're going to need a gun until, hopefully, if you're lucky, a split second before you do need it. It's the Law Enforcement Coalition, back when we were having this argument last December, how many people from out of state that have concealed weapons permits that come into the state are carrying in our state? They couldn't tell me. They didn't have any figures because they didn't even care. They're not worried about the public safety part of it. They're worried more of the control part of it. Okay, if they're more worried about Michigan citizens carrying concealed weapons permits than they are of people. And I'm waiting for this argument on reciprocity to shift over to, hey, we got too many people from out of state coming in here with guns. Then it's going to be a different type of argument. So the criminals. As soon as you pass another law, it really scares them. Like when they passed the Brady law, I mean, the criminals that were out there misusing it, they said, oh, I mean, I know we already got 20,000 laws on the books, but that Sarah Brady, she sounds like she's serious. So when you're talking about criminals, you can make all the laws you want. You can make being a criminal illegal, and it doesn't matter, okay? In my opinion, will not have any effect on the law-abiding citizens. Yes, sir. First of all, I want to thank the chief for coming. I really appreciate it. But we are a nation of laws and not men, and the men who administrate the laws is where the problem lies. Carl Marlinga administrates the very same laws as every other gun board in the state, and yet in Macomb County, a person can carry a concealed weapon for self-protection on a general permit, but that same person would be restricted or denied in another county. Just simply on if they don't make enough bank deposits or whatever. You have to show a good reason, you have to be a suitable person and all like that. That is not what Carl Marlinga goes by in Macomb County, and he's following the same laws that everybody else is governed under. The Supreme law in Michigan grants that right to every person. This battle has never been about a legitimate public safety concern, in my opinion. It's been totally about power and control. Right now, the police chiefs, the gun boards, the attorney general have the control over our right to keep and bear arms in this state. The power, however, still belongs to us. It always has and it always will. The right to keep and bear arms is inalienable. No man can, whether he's elected or appointed, regardless of his title, has the right to deny you or to control the exercise of that right. No board, no legislature, no majority, no judge can rule it. They can't vote it away, and nobody can take it away just because some lunatic goes into an auto plant or a train station and shoots the place up. Okay? It can't be taken away from you because of somebody's criminal action. It's time that we use our power to restore our rights and take the control away from those who have abused them. It's a time to stop jumping through hoops and begging permission from our own employees to exercise a right that was endowed to us by our Creator. We are winning this battle. Okay, this is proof. If they're willing to come this far, this shows that we are winning this battle. And we're winning because the truth is on our side, and we will not give up the fight until our rights are fully restored. We are powerful. We've got a lot of friends. There's a lot of groups out there, a lot of ground troops like the Michigan Gun Owners, Families for Concealed Carry, Gain Citizen Self-Defense League, General Laney with the Motor City Sportsmen's Association, and Mike Sessa from GOMAC, and Ron Chapman just recently did some judicial butt-kicking against Frank Kelly. So we're on the move here. We have a very vocal, and I don't have to tell these folks this, but we have a very vocal and vigilant membership, a totally committed and determined board of directors, a dynamic leadership with John Kuhn and Barb Gushaw. Our board of advisors have especially come through for us like champs. Larry Pratt from the GOA and Jim Church from the NRI have been providing some very heavy artillery and air cover. Glenn Williams, who's with us here tonight, he's always getting the sportsmen and the Michigan big game hunters and the folks in that community rallied behind this, and they were a great help during the election. Representative Dave Jay keeps this issue hot up at the state capitol. Carl Marling is doing a fantastic job and was the first to implement the CCWs for self-protection. You heard from Chief Lon Cripps last week proving to us that the law enforcement community does indeed support our rights, and especially Mr. Ted Nugent, who's our board of advisor members. Okay. I used to carry a picture of my mother near my heart, but now I carry this here. Okay. I'm telling you, make no mistake about it, Nugent is a nuclear weapon in our arsenal for gun rights. Yeah. Make sure that you write to his station and let him know how much you appreciate it. Let him know that you're a grassroots member, because that's how they get their ratings. But make no mistake about it, folks. The grassroots organization is not interested in making a deal or negotiating with our inalienable rights. We don't come hat in hand to ask for some special privilege. We're here to demand our rights, and we will restore them. We're not out just to rock the boat. We're out to sink the fleet. The price of liberty is eternal vigilance. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, did we have a debate? Work?